Was there an Adam? Was there an Eve? Or did we evolve from what we conceived? Either way, we got what we needed when the sun shone down on a garden.
Take it away, Harvey.
Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman, and I'm going to turn on my video. There we are. You can see behind me people in Miami, Florida, trying to vote. They are also waiting to get into the National Justice Roundtable. This is the first of a major history-making series. This is going to run all the way through the 2024 election. We are here to bend the arc of history towards justice. And that is what we're all about in terms of a wide range of issues, organizations, visions, dreams, and down-home, hardcore, real-time organizing. So as you can see by the spot on my nose, I was just at the beach, and the sun still does shine, and we do have global warming upon us. We will deal with that. I want to welcome my audience at Progressive Radio Network. This will be live podcast, well, actually taped podcast on Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, at least the first hour. If you are with us from the Progressive Radio Network and the tape runs out at an hour, come join us at electionprotection2024.org, and you can get the link to continue with the rest of it. This is going to be a 4-hour session, followed by full of great speeches and great organizers, people that you really want to know and love. And it will be followed by what we're calling a lasagna hour at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Pacific, where there will be anybody can speak. It'll be a round table that we will open it up to the public, and we will answer questions and do all the crazy things. We were call it the lasagna hour because this session, this meeting, this great Zoom gathering was originally supposed to happen in a church on the northwest side, the Plymouth Church of Washington. It was part and is still part of the Martin Luther King celebration. It's 58 years since Dr. King's speech, which I've seen 100 times, by the way. I use it in my history classes. I actually met Dr. King in 1966. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. We are walking in his shadow, standing on his shoulders, making history at this amazing Zoom call. I also want to dedicate the call and the gathering and all our work to the great Ed Asner. Ed Asner passed away yesterday on Sunday. He was 91 years old. I was lucky enough to have dinner with him in Santa Monica 2 Saturdays ago. It's easy to mourn Ed. I cannot tell you how much those who knew him are going to miss him. He was an absolutely wonderful human being. Anything you may think or dream about Ed Asner, knowing him from the media, is better. He was a wonderful guy, totally dedicated. And so rather than mourn him, we are going to celebrate his amazingly courageous, brilliant, and talented life with this series of gatherings. And I want to say also, by the way, we are nonpartisan. We have no party affiliations, but we are small d Democrats, and we are fighting for the future of the Republic. So that's where we're at. No party affiliation, not even the Greens, but we are certainly fighting for democracy and hoping to preserve the Republic. As Ben Franklin said at the end of the Constitutional Convention, someone asked him what form of government we would have, and he said, a republic, if you can keep it. And here we are trying to keep it and to preserve the small d of our democracy. This is about unifying our great movements. This is about unifying the progressive wing of the American public, of social activism in this country. And the 4 basic issues we're going to deal with today is our DC statehood, election protection and voter engagement, the environment and Solartopia, going to 100% green-powered Earth, and justice with an end to poverty and homelessness. Those are the 4 basic divisions. The purpose of this gathering is to tie together all these great movements. So we are going to start with some fabulous speeches, which will be introduced by the great Tatonka Bricca and Joel Segal. I want to thank Joel Segal. If any single person is responsible for pulling this gathering together, it's Joel Segal, who's put together endless hours. Former legislative aide to Congressman John Conyers, the real godfather of the Affordable Care Act. Joel, we are honored to have you. Tatonka Bricca, one of our great indigenous activists tied in with the Romero Foundation in California and active with the pipeline fights out west. This is just an incredible honor. We are going to get rolling here. We are on the case. Andrea Miller, our great tech guru and one of the great grassroots activists in our nation, is with us. Mike Hirsch and Steve Caruso. Andrea brings a team with her. Mike Hirsch and Steve Caruso are our engineers. And that's basically what I want to say, except I want to make it clear. This is both a moment and a movement. We have called together this incredible, unique National Justice Roundtable, and it will end, it'll enter a new chapter in November 2024. We are continuing every week, every Monday, to do our grassroots emergency election protection GREEP calls, where we discuss election issues. But every month, on the second Monday of every month, we will have a major gathering. This coming September, it will be about DC statehood. October, about election protection. November, about the environment. December, about justice, ending poverty and homelessness. And then next January, the second Monday of January in 2022, we will convene another National Justice Roundtable, and we will continue that cycle, that 5-month cycle, all the way through November of 2024. So we are not going away anything but. This is an ongoing movement as well as a moment. We intend to bend the arc of history. So welcome everybody. I'm going to turn it over now to Tatonka Bricca, who is going to introduce some of our keynote speakers, and then Joel Segal will introduce still more. We have 176 people on the call, and thank you everybody for joining us. Tatonka Bricca, please take it away.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Is it supposed to go to Joel or myself now?
You go ahead, Tatonka. It's okay.
You are going to introduce.
Okay.
You are going to.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on Earth where you're zooming in from, to our historic National Justice Roundtable. My name is Tatonka Bricca. I'm one of the millions of people whose life has been blessed, unalterably changed by Dolores Huerta. Dolores has been a warrior for peace, justice, workers' rights, women's rights, human rights, LGBTQ rights, the rights of nature, from a young adult to the feisty and restlessly impatient age of 91 years. Dolores is at home anywhere on earth, from the fields of California into the halls of Congress or White House, and she represents what creative and disciplined nonviolence, Gandhi King, Cesar Chavez style, can embody and produce. We're so blessed to have her as the first and founding senior consultant to this experiment we call the National Justice Roundtable, a much overdue initiative to bring together and unite as one all we individuals and organizations who carry the proud legacy of progressive values in politics. Dolores unhesitantly accepted this role. She knows the need for unity, and she'll say it in her own words. Her words, she's the one who convinced Cesar and the Union to adopt Si se puede as their moniker. And now the whole world says Si se puede. Yes, we can. So our way needs to be that way that Dolores embodies, of love, partnership, nonviolence, and courage to create a truly global community union. Okay, run the video.
Hi, everybody. This is Dolores Huerta, and I'm so happy that we're all together here at this National Roundtable. It is so important to have all of these voices from our leaders, because we are going into a very, very heavy campaign. Here in California, we're partnering with the Romero Center, and we're going to do a big comprehensive piece of legislation. We've already got the authors, and yes, in the California State Legislature, to get a comprehensive Green New Deal passed. And we are talking about including all of the governmental agencies that we have in California, because we know that we cannot wait. The time is now. The crisis is here. We have so many wildfires right here in California that you can't even see the sun on many, many days. But we know we cannot do this without having everybody involved. Everybody's going to come and have to help us make this happen, because we know there are some legislators that are going to be resistant because they're still getting money from the dark side. But in order to be able to win this comprehensive legislation that we want to pass, we're going to have our governor, Gavin Newsom. He's going to be there because we want him to declare an emergency crisis because of the global warming issues that we are facing. And we know right now that the right-wing Republicans, they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to do with the national election. They're trying to overturn a legitimate election. We elected Governor Gavin Newsom. And so we have to work very hard because the governor, he is our mainstay to make this happen. And we know that if we can do this in California, because we are always the leaders when it comes to policies and progressive policies in particular, we're going to need the governor to be there with us. So we're going to be inviting all of you to come and join us. We have a very short window of time. The election is over by September the 14th. So we have to have everybody help and call your friends in California not to forget to mail in their ballots so that we can keep Governor Gavin Newsom and we can make sure that we can make the progress that we need, because we don't have time anymore. The time is now. The crisis is here. We don't have to wait for it to happen. It's happening right now. So anyway, I'm glad everybody's here and we're going to have a really, really good event. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I want to thank Dolores for that. That 3-minute piece was to be a part of our environment section. And I think it's spirit at work here that it went now. Can the tech team bring up the 5-minute piece that she did for the entire gathering? It's fine that everybody got that message now. We won't have to play it in our one later. So run the 5-minute video, please. Dolores is in Mexico and couldn't be with us, but this is what she wanted to say to us. To unite all of us in our mission here today.
We'll keep going, Tatonka, and then we'll bring that video up as soon as we've got it ready to go. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty.
Okay. So I want to introduce a dear friend, colleague, Chase Iron Eyes. Not only you know him as the leader at Standing Rock, but now working with water protectors at Line 3 in Minnesota, but represents this work for water, for the water of the earth, whether it's in Nigeria, defended by our late brother Ken Saro-Wiwa, the waters of the Ashwar people in Ecuador and the headwaters of the Amazon, all over Mother Earth, Pachamama, indigenous people, nonviolent water protectors give their lives for all of us. So Chase was born in Standing Rock, North Dakota, presently lives with his wife and children in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. He's the attorney for the Lakota People's Law Project, started in 2005 to protect Lakota children taken from their families and culture by the state of South Dakota and placing them in foster care outside their communities, a practice which continues to this day. Chase ran unsuccessfully as a Democratic candidate for Congress in 2016. He's recognized just not as an effective legal and political advocate for the rights of the Lakota people, but also as a spiritual leader whose advice and counsel serves to bring together all humans. So we asked him to open this gathering. We're deeply honored. He unhesitantly said yes. Like Dolores, he's out of the country and would be with us and will be in future gatherings. It's my pleasure to present to you Lakota leader Chase Iron Eyes to bless our gathering and say a few words of inspiration.
Oha, wana kola iuha ichichia chante washte Nape Chayus Papelo. I want to send a message of greeting, a message of strength and solidarity to all of our brothers and sisters who are gathering in person, who are gathering in digital spaces. It is with great urgency, with great purpose that we offer our time, we offer our energy and our spirits to the common cause of not only DC statehood, but of a regenerative economy, a renewable way of life. Now that we have the ability to sit and perceive from our perch, we can see that Western civilization has taken a wrong turn somewhere. This is not to say a word about the genocide of indigenous peoples of the Americas. This is not to say a word of the transatlantic slave trade, which captured indigenous Africans and brought them here to our hemisphere. This is not to say a word of the institutions of white supremacy, which are in place today, which are executed against Black and brown bodies, against indigenous nations, and the movement toward Black liberation. This is just to assess and to analyze Western civilization itself. It has brought us to the brink, to the precipice of an extinction level event for the human species. The world is not ending, but for the human species, their world is certainly ending because of the lack of vision, because of the lack of leadership, because of the racial and working class subjugation and oppression that we together can undo. We together can seek a different way of life. This is possible through DC statehood. It is long past due that all of our brothers and sisters in DC who are at the seat of our nation's capital, who are in the belly of the beast, get the recognition and the due that they deserve. And on behalf of indigenous nations, the original civilizations of this hemisphere, I fully and with my whole being support DC statehood. It was my plan to join you today, brothers and sisters, and the least I could do is send my words of encouragement over the digital sphere. And I am with you there in spirit. We cannot relent. We cannot give an inch, because right now, the survival of our country, the survival of our body politic depends on whether or not we're able to figure out how to work together, whether or not we're able to graduate from those differences, those classifications like race, like religion that were imposed on us. Can we liberate from those differences and survive as a people that also respects those differences? But we have to come together because we are under attack, not only by the racist, radical right, but from the outside. There are other nation states that do not want to see us succeed. So I want to end my message here in solidarity with everybody gathered there today, in person, and online. Keep the strength, my relatives. Mitakuye Oyasi.
Fantastic.
Jay Fire and Eyes. And now I don't know if we have the Dolores tape ready.
We have heard 3 minutes of Dolores Huerta. Thank you, Tatonka. We're going to see Steve if we can have 5 more minutes. We will then go to Joel Segal and to our other great keynote speakers. Do we want to run Dolores now, Steve?
If we can do that, this was her message to all of us, not just about the California Green New Deal.
Right. Let me just say, here we go. Great.
Hello, I'm Dolores Huerta, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today on this National Justice Roundtable, which is now taking place and has been taking place, and we've had all of these really incredible speakers. You know, it's interesting when we think about this moment that we're in our society, that we might say that we're in kind of a civil war, or you might say that we're just picking up the remnants of the Civil War, things that were never taken care of, and now we find ourselves in the situation that we are in today. We know that there are many, many forces right now in our country who are really actively trying to destroy our democracy. While we know that our democracy has not yet really been fulfilled, we have so many issues that are still unresolved. We think that we got rid of slavery, but we really didn't, because we have slavery and its legacy as it applies to workers. When we think of our fast food workers, our farm workers, our custodians, the child care workers, the home care workers, and on, our hospitality workers all over the United States that are working really hard to keep our country going, and yet they are not being paid what they should be paid. And yet at the same time, we have the 10% of wealthy families and wealthy corporations that really are controlling the wealth of the United States of America. And at the same time, we see so many homeless people on our streets. And we think, how can we be in this situation? The richest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, and yet look around us and we see that the devastation among our poor families, what the COVID-19 has done, because people were not really properly, you might say, didn't have the knowledge or didn't have the support that they needed at the time that they needed it. So yes, we are in a civil war in our society right now. And in order for us to be able to combat what we are facing right now, we need the best minds in the country. Yes, when you're in a civil war, you get your best warriors and you get them to come out. And so what has been happening with this National Roundtable for Justice that we are now engaging in, we are hearing the words that we need to hear, not only the healing words, but the words so that we can understand and that we can verbalize and we can give the messaging out there to the people that we need to convince to make them get involved, because we know if we're trying to change this and the work that we need to do to, make sure that we have the Equal Rights Amendment for women, that we have an immigration policy that enables people to become citizens, that our labor unions will be given back the right to organize and to represent the workers so that they can get better wages and create the middle class, to have the kind of representation that we need in Washington, D.C., so that they can get the statehood that they have been fighting for now for how many, many, many years. In order to elect the people that we need that are really going to represent us, we have to do so much work, because at the end of the day, we are fighting for the soul of our country, not only a justice soul, but an economic soul, to make sure that we can get rid of the injustices that we are all facing today. And we know that at the bottom of this, to make this happen, we've got to make sure that people get engaged in voting. So we have a huge task, because we know that so many people out there are not engaged, that they're not informed, that they don't know exactly what's going on in the Congress of the United States of America, let alone the state legislature, the city council, their local school boards. When we have seen the mass incarcerations that are affecting our communities, and constant discrimination against people of color, our LGBTQ community, and of course, women. This is all ongoing right now. Where our resources are being spent, because we know the people we elect are the ones that are going to decide where our resources are going to be appropriated. So we have to kind of roll up our sleeves and say, okay, let's get to work. And let's listen to the people that are joining us on this National Justice Roundtable. Let's hear their messaging, let's heed their words, and let's act on their words, okay? Because we are so fortunate that all of these wonderful leaders are stepping up. They're stepping up, and they realize that we all have to come together if we are going to overcome this crisis, put our country on the right path to social justice, that we have to do it all together. Yes, we can make it happen, si se puede, but it's going to take every single one of us to do it. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Dolores Huerta. You are absolutely magnificent. We are humbled in your presence, and Chase Iron Eyes, thank you so much. I want to talk about briefly Tatonka Bricca, just a magnificent guy. It's really great in the movement when you can work with people that you really love and respect and enjoy. And that's been one of the great joys of putting this together. You are with the National Justice Roundtable. I'm Harvey Sluggo Wasserman, your general host, and we have 217 people on the call with us. It's fantastic. Behind me, you see a line of voters in Miami, Florida. We do never, ever want that to happen again. Our four basic issues are DC statehood, election protection, and voter engagement. And we'll have Andrea Miller on to talk with us about that, as well as other great people. Tatonka will be back to conduct a panel on the environment. And we will also be talking with Joel Segal later on about the justice, social justice, abolishing homelessness and poverty. And right now, I want to turn it over to the great Joel Segal. Joel is the godfather of the Affordable Care Act, the chief legislative assistant to Congressman John Conyers for many, many years. It's his plea for unity in the progressive movement that really has motivated this gathering. And Joel has magnificent speakers to introduce to you. So Joel, take it away, please.
Thank you, Brother Harvey. Great job. We're going to hear from my brother and colleague, Mustafa Ali, Executive Vice President of the National Wildlife Federation, founder of Revitalization Strategies. He was the #2 at EPA for a long time. Take it away, Mustafa Ali.
Thank you, Joel. And thank you for allowing me to hold space today on the Mattapanai and upon Monkey Land. I also want to thank all the heroes and sheroes who are on this event today, many of you who I've worked with and others who I've watched as I was growing up. And as I was thinking about the words that I would share today, James Baldwin came to mind. James Baldwin once shared with us that if I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things that you don't see. If we truly love our brothers and sisters, then we have to have a progressive movement that is inclusive, both on the domestic level and on the international level, because we understand the significance of the situations that we are dealing with, both the impacts and the sets of opportunities that are in front of us. If we truly love our brothers and sisters, then we have to do everything in our ability to make sure that we are passing the For the People Act so that folks' vote actually can take place, that we can protect it, that we can strengthen it, and then at the same time, strengthen our democracy. If we truly love our brothers and sisters, then we got to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act as well to make sure that we are restoring all of that hard work that our brothers and sisters did decades ago to have us in this moment. If we truly love our brothers and sisters, then we have to address the 140 million working class and lower wealth people who are struggling to put food on the table, to keep the lights on, and to make sure that they can save enough that they can make sure that their children have a better life. If we love our brothers and sisters, we have to address the 2.2 million people who are incarcerated in our country, in prisons, in jails, and internment centers on the border and in other locations. If we truly love our brothers and sisters, if we truly love each other, then we've also got to make sure that we are addressing the 200,000 people who are dying prematurely from air pollution every year in our country. And we know that disproportionately it is African-American and Latinx brothers and sisters who are the ones who are being impacted by that pollution that is now warming up our oceans and our planet and driving these storms like Hurricane Ida and a number of others that we see that are extracting both health and wealth outside of our communities. If we love our brothers and sisters, then we have to address the 24 million people who before COVID-19 were dealing with food insecurity, and the 25 million people who are dealing with, at this particular moment, being medically underserved and dealing with physician deserts. And if we truly love our brothers and sisters, then we have to help them to understand that all of these aspects are interconnected. We got to make sure that we are loving our housing insecure brothers and sisters, the over 500,000 who go to sleep every night without a roof over their head. If we love our brothers and sisters, then we will address these issues as a unified force, making sure that all voices are being honored in this moment and that real change can and will happen. My grandmother says that when you know better, do better. We know the policies that are necessary for change to happen. We know the accountability that has to be put in place, that once federal laws and policies are in place and they move to the states and the counties and the local governments, that we got to make sure that one, the resources are there, but also that there's real accountability. And if we are willing to do that, then we can change dynamics. W.E.B. Du Bois shared with us one time that a system cannot protect those that it was never meant to protect. We have to dismantle and deconstruct and take out those aspects of policy that have not been helpful to communities across our country and rebuild that. That's the hard work that we have in this moment. I will leave you with this, the words of Dr. King. Dr. King said that we come to these shores in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. Whether we're talking about COVID-19, we're talking about the climate crisis, we're talking about voter suppression, or the racial injustices that continue to happen from our law enforcement, we're all in this same boat. We're all connected, and we all can make real change happen. My grandmother shared this, that we have power unless we give it away. Let's use our power to make real change happen. I want to thank each and every one of you for the decades of work that you've done and the work that we have moving forward.
Fantastic, Mustafa. I could have listened to you, Reverend Mustafa Ali. I worked with Mustafa in Congressman John Conyers' office for 3 years, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Thank you, Mustafa Ali, for your leadership, your courage, your vision, and we're so glad that you're going to be a leader of the National Justice Roundtable. Our next distinguished speaker is none only than Reverend Graylin Hagler. He is the senior minister at Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ. He is one of the single most important interfaith leaders in the country, if not in the world. He's my brother. He's my friend. He's also our senior advisor. So Reverend Graylin Hagler, would like to hear some prayer and your words, and I like your beard.
Thank you. My beard is just coming back. I've had little medical issues, and so I've been going through some treatment. But all is good, and I give thanks that we're able to be here today. And I want to thank you, Joel, and all the others for all the hard work in terms of pulling this together and pulling people together. To see the names of old friends pop up on the screen in the chat is something that's heartwarming to know that folks are still out there doing what we need to be doing. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of this. Now, one thing that hits me as we talk about this roundtable is very often we talk about things of the past, but we're not students of the past. And we are in a climate, in a place right now, in an alarming historical moment. And yet that moment is familiar. For those who are familiar with the dismantling of Reconstruction after the Civil War, you know that we are witnessing in many regards is a historical replay of political suppression that began with the Depression of 1873 after the Civil War and ended with the Compromise of 1877, when the last remaining Union troops were removed from the South and the former slave states enjoyed one court decision after another that rendered elections, voting rolls, and how elections were conducted a concern of state governments and not something of the federal government. It also meant that state constitutions constructed with the input of those who were formerly enslaved during Reconstruction, and those state constitutions reached towards economic and social inclusion, and where some of the models that were offered would empower the poor of every color was turned back after the compromise, and states were able to ignore the voting rights by constructing new constitutions that replaced Reconstruction Constitution. Jim Crow was born. Now, Reconstruction saw a vast array of legislative transforming the status of the formerly enslaved, such as the Voting Civil Rights Act of 1866, the ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in 1865, 68, and 70, respectively. These legislative actions built upon the idea of reconciliation from the division of a nation and a war fought over slavery. It sought to create an inclusive citizenry and a democracy where the issues and concerns ignored by agrarian big business would be brought to the policy table in order to create a more perfect union. The post-Civil War initiatives was a threat to those in power. And one person, one vote threatened to bring to power those who had been enslaved and those who have been marginalized and the slave, and the de facto slave economy would be scrutinized and rendered reprehensible if folks were able to remain in power. The people elite was not going to stand for it, and designs were made to limit those who could vote and therefore mute the voices of social and economic change. I lift that up because this is where we are today. This so-called big lie, as it is called, is a lie. And those who promote the lie are not promoting it because they believe it, but because they want to poison the electoral process where people turned out against great odds and obstacles to vote. The forces of white supremacy, or what I call white idolatry, had crystallized, and Black and brown, Asian, indigenous, progressive, liberals, radicals, and socialists, woke Christians and Muslims, and woke Jews stepped out to do something about the resurgence of white idolatry. And we voted en masse. The big lie that the election was broken, that people voted who should not have voted, is the old political rhetoric of white idolatry, where legitimate voters are always deemed white. During Reconstruction and the enforcement of one person, one vote, an estimated 2,000 Black men served in offices at every level of government, including 2 US senators and 20 congressmen, and with the last Black congressman, George Henry White, leaving office in 1901, but another did not serve again until 1929, with Oscar DePriest being elected on the south side of Chicago as a result of the Great Migration, with Blacks escaping the harshness of the South. Now, I'm saying all this to remind us that history truly repeats itself. Some things may not fit precisely, but the overall examination of history tells us where we are right now, what we are up against, and it may shed some light on strategies that must be employed to challenge the racist and fascist agendas. I point all this out because one is that I've always been a student of racism and white supremacy in this country, something that many of us don't want to look at. We talk about class, et cetera, but look at when you talk about the removal of Native people from the lands that was built upon race. The taking of territories on the southern border was predicated upon race. The adventurism in terms of imperialism in the Caribbean and other places is predicated upon race. Even in Palestine, Israel is predicated upon race. There is a racial dynamic that we are battling against in this country and in this world. And we might as well own up to it and declare that it is before us, and therefore we need to be engaged in the challenging and the dismantling of it. That's the only way we begin to, in a sense, activate and keep people activated, because one thing that's going on is the young folks out there, they truly know that this is an issue that is predicated upon race and not so much upon class, but race, and it excludes them, and therefore they're angry and they're acting, and sometimes they don't participate because we want to dress things up too well for them. Now, a few things I want to bring for clarity as I close out. The inclusion for a true justice agenda must break beyond the paradigm of black and white. Our struggle must become an inclusive one built upon principles. We should re-examine the tactics that have worked. Black Lives Matter, for example, closing down roadways and city streets are valid tactics to make for radical change. They were an inspiration, and so many of us engage in the nostalgia of the past, but have failed in the nuances of past tactics. I hear people and I participate in things where people talk about nonviolence, but truly do not understand what nonviolence is and how nonviolence can be a tactic and should be a tactic. But nonviolence should create tension. The tactic of nonviolence was built upon a model of provocation. To provoke the British in India, to provoke Southern whites in the South and the Southern power structure in the South. But we today, we practice the nonviolence, but have failed in the lessons of provocation. Tactics of change creates an atmosphere of dis-ease. It demands a reaction, and it consciously demands an outrageous and egregious reaction from the other side. Change is decided at the ballot box, yes it is, and it's also decided in the streets. Unfortunately, many of us want to make a choice between either the ballot box or the streets, when really it is the two that come together that really make for lasting change. We fail when we try to employ one without the other. We're engaged in a time and a culture where those that we are up against care little about the truth-telling or justice or morality, or can be shamed into doing right. They're not concerned about ethics or fair play. And those we must not, we must not lose our sense of morality and our sense of justice, but we must understand that there is less and less of a collective moral conscience in this country, and that means that the nation's consciousness is not pricked by the exposing of injustices, but instead are awakened by the power of movements, the clarity of our message, whether we can build a unity of hope in hope, and whether we can build together rather than divide ourselves over issues and tactics. We must build a platform that engages and a code of conduct that calls us all to embrace one another and the struggles and the issues of one another. And I think that we got to go further to being engaged in a campaign of reform. But I think we got to transform the culture, because we've been playing the reform game long enough, and the reforms that we bring are never far enough, never change much at all, and can revert back to the past. So we need to be about a transformative spirit in our agenda, and we need to bring it to the streets and understand that we are engaged in a war, and that war is a war of values, but that war is also a war of power. God bless you.
Well, God bless you, Reverend Hagler. Thank you so much for that incredible talk. We really, really appreciate it. We've got more great speakers to come. Joel Segal is going to continue with his introductions. I want to remind everybody, this was originally supposed to be in Reverend Hagler's church on the northwest side of DC, and we jumped to Zoom. Many of you are here because, unfortunately, we couldn't do that. But Reverend Hagler, thank you so much for offering your church, and thank you so much for that brilliant, powerful speech. We're going to continue now with Joel Segal. Thank you again. Joel, take it away, bro. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Reverend Hagler. Thank you for agreeing to be one of our senior advisors, but that was amazing. I've missed you all these years, so it's great to see you again. All right, our next speaker is the one and only Representative Alan Grayson, who is running for the Senate of Florida. I'm sure he'll win. He was one of the most progressive members of Congress that I have ever seen in the 13 years that I worked in Congress. I think he's a genius. He's my brother, my friend. And let's hear from Representative Alan Grayson, and then we'll move to Christian Nunes, the president of the National Organization for Women. Thank you.
My video has been disabled. Can somebody help me with that? It says you cannot use your video because the host has disabled it.
We'll get it working.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
You get the prize for the best shirt, by the way.
By far.
My wife knows about that. She got it for me. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and specifically, it's a pleasure to be here among kindred spirits. It takes a certain kind of person to join a meeting like this, a person with a head and a heart, somebody who remembers what RFK said. It's not enough just to look at the world and ask why, but to think of things that never were and ask why not. And that's what everyone on this call is devoted to doing day in and day out to make the world a better place. It is the best of times. It is the worst of times. It's the worst of times because, well, just look around us. Social cohesion is collapsing right in front of our eyes. We've had 600,000 people in America die of COVID in the past 18 months. In more well-organized societies, societies where people actually give a damn about each other, the numbers are incredibly lower. In New Zealand, for instance, the number is 27. 600,000 in the United States, 27 in New Zealand. Last year, just under 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses, mainly from a drug that's legal. The opiates in this country are generally legal if prescribed, and we had almost 100,000 people leave us last year because of that. By every conceivable measure, this country is collapsing. Every year under Donald Trump, our life expectancy went down. When he started, we were 50th in the world. God only knows where we are right now. When he started, we were 38th in the world in terms of avoiding stillbirths and dead children under the age of 1. God only knows where we are now. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Equality skyrockets. The stock market goes up and up and up, while life expectancy goes down and down and down. And it seems like things couldn't possibly get worse, and then you realize they get worse. The worst of it at this point is the fact that the other side has their own issues, and their issues sound crazy to people like us. They insist that everybody should have a gun. Where does that come from? It would be nice if everybody had health care, but no, they want everybody to have a gun. If they could, they'd give guns to fetuses for self-protection. They stoke racism, homophobia, sexism, every kind of ism that there is. And the former president of the United States congratulates them and says that those folks can be good people too. Every sort of tactic for voter suppression, they'll make sure that millions of Americans can't vote out of the fear that somewhere a Republican might be voting twice, because those are the ones who actually do it. If you actually look at cases of voter fraud, they're overwhelmingly Republican. And yet they, on account of that, they want to suppress the votes for everybody. And then this fake indignation, simply bring up these issues, just talk about them, and you're accused of political correctness. So what they want to do is basically tell all of us STFU and keep it that way. They want to make sure they all understand that we have the right to remain silent, whether we like it or not. And that's America in this awful, terrible period of time. But here's the good news. Things are changing, and actually changing for the better. The reconciliation bill that passed the Senate is the best bill I've ever seen in my entire life. It has one of my pet projects in it, expanding Medicare to cover eyes, ears, and teeth. I lined up almost 200 members of Congress to do that during my 3 terms in Congress, and now it's finally coming to fruition. Last year, we saw $4 trillion handed out by the government in the name of COVID relief. Roughly $3 trillion of that was corporate welfare, but $1 trillion of that actually helped ordinary people in need, people who in some cases had never been covered by unemployment insurance before. Everybody understands what the real agenda is here. It's not racism. It's not homophobia. It's not virus facilitation. It's not gun nuttery. It's better paying jobs, healthcare for everybody, increasing Social Security and Medicare, taxing people no more than we tax corporations, free higher education, paid sick leave, and above all, healing the environment, because this is the only planet that we've got. And over time, what we're seeing is that those people who we thought might have been lost to the other side forever, the ones who gave Donald Trump everything but 100,000 votes they needed to reign once again, those people are slowly starting to wake up. They're woking. They're woking. They're starting to understand that all of this appeasement from the other side, all of this craziness, all this virus facilitation is only killing them. It's killing them. And therefore, there is hope. I have a feeling that over time, we will see the tide has turned, and it's up to every one of us to make sure that we do everything we can to make that happen. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Great speech. Thank you so much.
Soon to be senator of Florida. But when I was in Congress, Representative Grayson was one of the most gracious, nice members of Congress that I ever met, and I think he's a political genius. Now, our final speaker is none other than Christian Nunes, the president of the National Organization for Women. She is an incredible leader, and it is so nice to have Christian Nunes. Christian Nunes, take it away. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Joel. Good afternoon, everyone. As Joel mentioned, I'm Christian Nunes, the National President for the National Organization for Women. And I'm so excited to be here representing NOW and to share the space with all of you in solidarity on a progressive and movement such as the National Justice Roundtable. So some of you might be wondering, why NOW's part of this, but we do want to talk about why we believe that climate justice, racial justice, all these issues are feminist issues. The climate crisis is just one of the existential crises that the BIPOC and Latinx and marginalized communities are facing today and every day. Racial justice, injustice, economic inequality, police violence, healthcare inequality, they're all built on structures of racism. And that same structure that contributes to the foundation of our country. These structures were created to oppress, depress, and establish systems of power that have been difficult to dismantle for centuries. These are all intersectional crises, and they demand intersectional and progressive solutions. So we talk about what does a progressive intersectional movement look like, and why is it important, and why is it a feminist issue for us? And why is it a solidarity issue for all of us? Why are we all coming together? Because we believe that we all have to work together. And I want to talk a little bit back from the perspective of a female, from a woman and a feminist and intersectional, and tell you why we're joining this National Justice Roundtable and why we want to work in solidarity with everyone. Intersectional feminism recognizes that BIPOC, Latinx women have been excluded from traditional feminist ideas because they're facing overlapping discriminations rooted in gender and race. And in the context of climate justice, intersectionality can spotlight how marginalized communities within different identities are affected by environmental justices that endure, and how our systems are so entrenched with white supremacy and patriarchy that they consequentially have an impact on women in every facet of their lives. So let's just take a look at some of those things. Before too long, when we talk about conversations about these things, we always heard about conversations that were pretty much whitewashed. And when the environmentalist movement came into prominence in the 1970s, we heard about Earth Day and demonstrations and public broadcasting specialists and academic conferences, but they all lacked diversity. And they all lacked to talk about the impact that they had on women, people of color, and marginalized communities. And our communities are paying the highest impact on what's happening in our country right now. We can look at what's happening right now in a country's dependence on fossil fuels, dying from air pollution, cancer from exposure to toxic chemicals, and consequences of severe weather to the national average. We can look at what's happening in our communities when we look at the long-standing racist policies and practices, such as residential segregation, prison gerrymandering, and unequal educational opportunities and limit prospects from economic advancements that make our populations and BIPOC populations more vulnerable to climate change impacts. Let's look at food deserts. Where we go into certain communities of color, we have to go miles and miles to find good quality food. But yet we can go around the corner and find a liquor store or a loan sharking agency. More people of color are placed in environments that are polluted with toxic waste as polluters, deliberately and calculatedly placed in their facilities closer to coal mining facilities. The NAACP found that communities of color breathe in 40% more polluted air than white communities, while Black Americans make up 13% of these US populations. So if we make up only 13% of the Black American, but yet we're breathing in more than 40% of polluted air, I would say that's an injustice. And fully 68% live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant compared to 56% of whites. And when we think about Hurricane Katrina, the Deepwater Horizon exploded in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. The waste from the cleanup efforts was trucked to landfills, mostly in Black communities in Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida, where we have single mothers with their children, and we have Black families and communities, and we have our elderly living there, who may not have centralized air, who may not have air conditioning at all. And we talk about how are they getting quality good air? What are their children breathing in? What are their children being exposed to? And this is why this is an injustice. And this is why this is a feminist issue. And even then, we can look at cases over and over throughout our history, how case of history keeps repeating itself. And even our disaster response has shown desperate impact in how we respond. And as we're seeing right now, as Hurricane Ida is heading out, once again, Louisiana is directly impacted when they're still dealing with unresolved issues for Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And those are mainly in the Black communities. Because around the area where money brings in, it's back to normal. And no one can even tell if Hurricane Katrina ever happened. But if you go deep into communities of marginalized communities and indigenous communities and Black communities and brown communities, you will see that there are still buildings marked with FEMA. And this is a problem. Intersectional environmentalist seeks justice for colonialization of stolen land from indigenous people, an end to environmental racism, equitable access to green space, and equitable representation for the LGBTQIA populations and communities, and disabled communities in the outdoors. The progressive justice movement seeks justice for prison gerrymandering, where we remove access and resources for those who are incarcerated and put their census status in a community that they do not live. So when they return home, they have limited resources. Redlining, food deserts, insufficient reproductive care and primary care in our communities, or people have to drive over 100 miles to find an OBGYN or to get a primary care doctor. This is injustice. Jim Crow voter ID laws, which we're all seeing happen in the soul of the South right now. And we're seeing people who have to find ways to show ID, and mothers and married women who cannot prove their own identities because their last names are different. And our elderly who are maybe born in a small Southern area who don't have access to their birth certificates. And we have to ask the question, if we were brought to attention and said, please show me your birth certificate and your marriage ID or your divorce papers, will we be able to do the same thing? And most of us would say no. But yet we're allowed to see this happening in our communities and we're supposed to be quiet and say nothing. This is injustice. And not to mention, when we talk about more to the South of sacred indigenous lands by corporations that go into these lands and pillage them and also then attack their women and with domestic violence and sexual assault, and then feel that they can freely leave because they're in federal land and it's different land zones and different rules. This is not okay. And for the women who are working as essential workers on the front line, who are providing services for those who are wealthy, but cannot even provide the same quality childcare for their own children. And victims of crime and those with housing who have to face red tape just to figure out how to file an application and get eviction moratoriums or victim of service benefits. And these are the things that are provided to make us helpful, but we have so much systematic racism built in our institutions that it continually oppresses and causes problems. And all these intersect: race, gender, environment, all of these intersect. These communities are most impacted, and we're seeing them pay a price, and it's not an accident, and it's not a coincidence. So solutions that we build need to be on an anti-racist, progressive, and intersectional movement. We are called upon today to be intersectional and progressive advocates for justice. And as we recognize that climate justice, racial justice, healthcare justice, housing justice are just simple siloed issues, we cannot work in a siloed movement. We have to come together in solidarity because we're all deeply impacted by each other. And we cannot win this fight if we're fighting individual. We cannot win the fight of racism and violence because they're all intertwined. So our progressive movement has to be intertwined and holistic. In 1975, Toni Morrison told us the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps us from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Well, today I tell us all we must stop justifying our very existence, our rights, and our worth as human beings. It is inherent. We are worthy and valued, and we deserve safety, security, equality, and justice. It is going to take all of us to come together as a progressive justice roundtable and in an intersectional grassroots movement. The focus is on amplifying the voices and the collective power of the people. Organizing with focused strategies at the local, state, and national levels with accountability, transparency, and support from coalition partners and allies. And today is just a starting ground, and I'm so excited to be here today with all of you as we work toward it. And most important, it's essential that we recognize that we have to identify systematic racism and oppression as part of the deep-rooted issues that contribute to these problems. These evils are baked into not just our economy and our society and our institutions, but into the purity of the air that we breathe, into what we do every day without even knowing. So we have to attack that, and we have to dismantle that, and we have to reconstruct that. So I thank you all today for just taking time to listen to me. And I look forward to moving forward with you and the National Justice Roundtable for Progressive Movement that will come together in solidarity, and we will knock this out of the park, and we will finally come up with some solutions that will benefit all of us and just keep moving forward for our people and the cause. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very much, my sister and friend Christian. Now we have one of the most incredible speakers left, and that's Mia Cenatal. I hope I didn't butcher your last name. March for Our Lives. We all know what happened at Parkland, and the March for Our Lives movement is one of the most robust national student movements, in the history of this country. And Mia, we are so honored to have you as one of the most important leaders of the March for Our Lives movement, and I know you'll tell us a little bit more about it. We're going to go about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to go to the different panels. But welcome, Mia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joel. Hi, everyone. I'm so appreciative to be in the presence of other movement leaders and activists and just to hold this space together. My name is Mia Cenatal. I'm the Deputy Organizing Director at March for Our Lives. As some of you may know or may not know, we are a gun violence prevention organization that was born out of the tragic shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018, in which 17 lives were lost. Out of that tragedy, a youth-led movement with over 300 chapters across the country was born. We are harnessing the power, the frustration, and the determination of young people to fight for gun violence prevention measures that will save our lives and to say it ends with us. This work is so important to me because gun violence is the leading cause of death for young Americans. As a young person, as young people, we can't afford to continue waiting on political leaders who refuse to act when every day parents are getting that phone call informing them they've lost their child, when people are losing their siblings and community members, when people are burying their loved ones, they get no reassurance that there will be action. They are just expected to be part of the statistics. Victims aren't abstract numbers. They have families and a community but our current political leadership is too cowardly and too corrupt to act when over 100 Americans die from gun violence every day. Think about that for a minute. Think about being one of those 100 families who will lose a loved one today. One of those families who have to make arrangements to bury their loved ones, only to be told by our political leadership that there's nothing else they can do, that their loved one's death is just not important enough for action to be taken. And what do we have to do to win? What does winning look like? What we're doing right now. Our movements need to unite. This is what we're doing at this roundtable. Movement leaders from different areas of activism are coming together to work together. Gun violence especially is a deeply intersectional issue, inextricably bound with our long journey for racial justice, economic justice, immigrant rights, the rights of our LGBTQ+ comrades. In order to address the root causes of gun violence, we need to work together with other movements as our work is bound together. Traditionally, the gun violence prevention space has been siloed from other movements, and March for Our Lives is no exception. But to fully eradicate gun violence, we must liberate ourselves from all forms of oppression by working together. And I just want to thank the organizers again of this roundtable for having us. I'm really excited for the next speakers to come.
Excellent, excellent, Mia. Harvey, Sluggo, Wasserman, take it away.
Fantastic, Mia. I have to say that the grandson of my best friend growing up was killed at Parkland. I can hardly say this. Max Schachter, he was like 15. I don't know how old he was. My friend was devastated. We are thrilled with your work. It is absolutely essential. And we are in awe of you. And imagine having your issue joined in to this amazing National Justice Roundtable. I want to tell my listeners at Progressive Radio Network, the Solartopia Green Power Wellness Show, that this tape is ending for you, and you should go, please, to electionprotection2024.org to pick up the next 3 or 4 hours of our discussion here. It's spectacular to have so many different issues joined in. Senator Michael Brown, if you're ready to go, we are going to switch over to DC Statehood now. I do want to emphasize that this is the first National Justice Roundtable. We are going to continue this work at least through November 2024. This is both a moment and a movement. And our sessions will be the second Mondays of every month. But we do also have the Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition. We are going to continue with those gatherings at 5 o'clock on Mondays. And we will continue with these gatherings for as long as it takes to change the world. Thank you so much, Mia, for pointing out, and Christian, the importance of this gathering together of so many issues under one roof. I do want to mention the so-called Tubin rule. If your camera is on, you need to have your clothes on, please. This is not Pornhub. If you're here for Pornhub, go somewhere else. This is the first national gathering of people working really hard to coalesce in a unified movement. And my brother, Joel Segal, has been really, really great on that, emphasizing the importance of that. Do we have Senator Brown?
Yeah.
To talk about DC. There you are. We have a United States Senator. Senator Brown, it's spectacular to be with you. This is the first of our 4 major issue windows. We have DC Statehood. That will be followed by election protection and voter engagement, and then followed by the environment. You see my Solartopia shirt on, and followed that by the Justice Roundtable to include ending poverty and homelessness. Senator Brown, it's an honor to be with you. You have the great Charles Moreland with you, I believe, Franklin Garcia and Anise, and you have 5 minutes to tell us about the incredible importance of DC Statehood, and please take it away.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is very important to us to have a national coalition to work to liberate the people of the District of Columbia and make us equal. I want to start by not only thanking Joel and Harvey, but also Chase Iron Eyes and Miss Huerta for their eloquent support of our cause. My name is Michael Brown, and I'm the United States Senator from the District of Columbia, one of 2 United States senators who are elected, like all other senators, to a 6-year term, but not allowed to serve. I want to give you a brief history of our struggle so you understand how we got to where we are today. Our problems all started in Philadelphia in 1783 when a bunch of Revolutionary War veterans surrounded Congress at Carpenter's Hall and demanded to be paid for their service. Congress had to sneak out the back door and escape to New Jersey. I was raised in Newark, New Jersey, and I can tell you that's a scary proposition sometimes. So they went to New Jersey, and when they came to when they decided to make the District of Columbia their capital, Madison argued that they must be in control of the jurisdiction they inhabit so they could protect themselves from a possible insurrection. I think after January 6th, we now know that's a moot point. They created an Organic Act in 1801, which took away all our rights, our right to representation, our right to control our own budget, our right to pass our own laws. In 1804, part of the city that was donated by Virginia was given back to them because they were afraid that we were going to end slavery, which we did. We were the first jurisdiction, ironically enough, to end slavery in the United States, and we are the last jurisdiction to be freed. We've had many forms of government over the years. We've had appointed commissioners from the president. We've had an appointed mayor. But in 1973, through a thing called the Home Rule Act, we got a mayor and city council. However, even though we can pass our own laws and collect our own taxes, Congress is still in charge of everything in the district. No law can be passed without their tacit approval. No dollar can be spent if they decide against it. So the people in District of Columbia are really second-class citizens in every sense of the word. We've tried everything over the years. We've had many court cases, the last being Adams versus Clinton, in which the court decided that we had no basis to come to court because Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever. So they said that our problem is not a legal problem, it's a political problem. In the 1970s, we had a constitutional amendment with bipartisan support that passed both houses of Congress but didn't get ratified. In 2009, we had a bipartisan piece of legislation that would have given us a vote in the House, but it never became law. It passed both houses and still never became law. So that's why we're at statehood right now. And the reason we want statehood is because all states enter the Union on the same footing. So making us the 51st state would make the people of District of Columbia equal. Some people argue that we're not large enough to be a state, but in population, we're larger than Wyoming and Vermont, both who have voting senators and representatives. In the Senate, right now, we have 47 co-sponsors on a bill that would make us a state. In the House of Representatives, that bill has passed on partisan support. We lack 3 votes in the Senate to give us 50 votes, which would be Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Cenatal of Arizona and Angus King of Maine. If we can get those 3 people on the bill and we can suspend the rule or get rid of the filibuster, one of those 2 things, and if we can't suspend the rule for something as basic as citizenship, then the rule becomes a tool of tyranny. So we should be able to suspend that rule at least if we can't get rid of the filibuster. And with 50 votes and the Vice President of the United States who was a sponsor of statehood and a Howard University graduate. How appropriate would that be? With her vote, we could actually pass it. And the President of the United States has told me personally, and he's made a public declaration actually earlier this year, that he supports DC statehood. So that's where we stand right now. We have 712,000 people that fight in wars, pay the highest per capita income taxes in America, and they aren't represented. And this has become a partisan battle. There's no Republican that supports us because they understand if you get two more liberal Democrats in the United States Senate, the progressive agenda will move forward in leaps and bounds. We, the citizens of the District of Columbia, support reasonable gun control. We support environmental and social changes. And if you help us get statehood, if you stand with us, I guarantee you the agendas of everybody that's on this broadcast today, that's at this round table today, will move forward. You know, Dr. King told us that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. But what he didn't say, and what we have to know, is that the rate at which it bends depends on how many people are willing to stand up and temper it. So please stand with the people of the District of Columbia. We need your support. This is an important issue, not just for us, but for all America. Thanks so much for having me, Joel and Harvey. I really appreciate the opportunity to address this distinguished group.
Well, you are great. It's great to have a U.S. Senator on with us. Tremendously important. Anise Jenkins, would you like to jump in with 3 minutes here? Anise Jenkins, are you on? I do want to emphasize there's three basic issues as we wait for Anise. With DC Statehood, they're incredibly important. First, of course, is justice for the 700,000 people in the district, which happens to include my sister and her two children and my three grandnieces and grandnephew, who were all born in DC, disenfranchised. Secondly, of course, as Senator Brown mentioned, the balance of power in DC. And third, which is something a lot of people don't think about, is that the January 6th attack could only have happened with DC not being a state. Had DC had a governor, as do all the other states in the country, that governor could have called out the National Guard.
That's right.
And so our national capital is incredibly vulnerable. As those are three basic reasons. And Anise Jenkins, if you'll take it away, you'll give us some more, please. Is she unmuted? Can you unmute Anise?
Anise is unmuted. We can't hear her. There's something on her end. Anise, can you look into that? Because you are unmuted.
Do we have Charles Moreland or Franklin Garcia on the call? Charles, Michael Brown, Senator Brown, do we have Charles or Franklin on the call?
I assume they're on the call. I think Anise has probably muted herself. Let's see.
Anise, can you I see you're muted in the bottom left. Are you good? Can you unmute? This is the perils of Zoom. I'm sure you've all heard this before. We have 224 people on the call. We are, those of you who are interested, you should make good use of the chat. Post your contacts in the chat, anything you want to say. The chat is very active, and you will be able to download it at the end. I don't know that we'll be able to provide you with a transcript, but you certainly can download the chat at the end of this broadcast roundtable. Anise, have you got any luck unmuting?
Now Anise is muted, so we definitely won't be able to hear her. You got to unmute yourself, please, and then turn up your volume so we can hear you.
And do we have Charles Moreland or Franklin Garcia on the call? Charles or Franklin?
I don't see him.
Okay. So, Anise, when we get you muted, wherever it happens to be, we will bring you in. But DC statehood is not an issue that people are talking enough about. And we do have a senator. We do not call them shadow senators, as Charles Moreland, who was the first representative. They are the legitimate representatives of the DC government. Unfortunately, of the DC people of the District of Columbia, or the Douglas Coalition, as we're talking about now. And let's move ahead. This is Anish will call on you later. We're going to shift now, if we can, to my co-host joining me, Andrea Miller. Are you with us, Andrea? There you are. Okay, so we're going to enter the second section now of this program of this National Justice Coalition. If you've turned in late, this is the first national gathering of the progressive movement, cross-issue, cross-cultural, you name it. And we are now going to pop into the issue of election protection and voter engagement. As you can see behind me, the picture I've been maintaining is a long, long line for voting in Miami, Florida. We don't want those lines anymore. I've been involved with this election protection issue since 2004 in Ohio, when they denied me my right to vote, and my cohort, Bob Fitrakis, is on. We had a federal lawsuit, which we won in Ohio, to get access to all the voter records. And since then, I will point out, I'm going to say unequivocally, that without the election protection and voter engagement movements, Donald Trump would still be in the White House. Had the 2020 election been conducted on voting machines instead of with paper ballots, then Joe Biden would never have won. You can leave that to your own conclusions, but the bottom line is it was paper ballots and hand-counted paper ballots that made all the difference in 2020. So Andrea Miller, I can't say enough about Andrea Miller. She is the great guru of this call in terms of the technical side, co-engineered with Steve Caruso and Mike Hirsch. And she is also the godmother of the Georgia Miracle. You have a great lineup of guests, Andrea, and we'll turn it over to you, and then you'll send it back to me when you're ready to roll.
Hey, thanks, Harvey. Thanks, everybody. I've got a very low internet connection today, so I am going to be your shortest speaker ever. So what of the things that we are working on over at Center for Common Ground is we are staffing up democracy centers so that we can be sure that low-income community of color voters will have people in their communities giving them information that they need to be able to turn out and be able to go and vote. Folks will be equipped with the latest tools that are available. The person who's running the Zoom room with me today, because my bandwidth is so low, is our Deputy Policy Director. So we will be building all different types of legislative advocacy tools to make it easy for people to contact both legislative committees at the federal level and at the state level, in addition to all the work that we do around voting. So again, I want to thank you all for joining me today. Unmute, Harvey.
We do have Anish Jenkins, who's been unmuted, and let's let her, since DC Statehood is a part of the election protection movement, let's let Anish speak in. If Charles or Franklin show up, that'd be fine too. And we don't want to see voting lines like the ones behind me, but we do want to see voting lines in DC for senators and Congress people. So Anish, take it away for 3 minutes, please. Oh, you're muted again.
Anish, I think it might have something to do with your microphone. Is your speaker connected to your computer or your phone? You can check that by the little mute button at the bottom.
Okay.
Sometimes the speakers connect to something else.
We'll try and get Anish again. Andrew, do you want to give it to your first guest?
All right. Let's see. Our first guest is going to be, I'm going to go a little bit out of the order, I'm going to call on Noel. So Noel, Noel and I have worked together at the Worker Circle. So Noel, go ahead, please.
Do we have Noah Barron?
She's here.
Hi, Andrea. It's so good to be with everybody. And I think actually it's Noah Barron who is going to go rather than me in this order.
Oh, all right.
So Noah Barron should be here and also.
And Noah is. All right. So Noah, I'm pinning you. There's Noah.
Hello.
Hi,
everyone.
Noah.
My name is Noah Barron, and I'm a voting rights organizer as well as a college organizer at the Worker Circle, and I'm also a rising senior at NYU. So I help run a national network of progressive Jewish college students, the Worker Circle College Network, and voting rights is one of our key issues right now. As I'm sure many of us are aware, in this year alone, 389 bills in 48 states have been introduced that would restrict the right to vote. 30 of these have already become law, and these laws especially hurt young voters and voters of color. This issue is very important to me as a young person. College students are particularly suppressed by many of these laws. Limiting mail-in voting and limiting early voting makes it difficult for people my age to cast their ballot. An unnecessary, confusing registration process takes hours to navigate. Strict voter IDs make it harder to vote than to get a gun, and they discriminate against trans voters. Additionally, partisan gerrymandering has at times split college campuses into more than one district, making it really confusing for students like myself to figure out where to vote. So I've been hosting weekly phone links at the Worker Circle with the Center for Common Ground, calling voters of color in key states like Arizona and patching them through to Senator Sinema with the message to not let the filibuster stand in the way of their voting rights and to pass the For the People Act. As a Worker Circle organizer, I also helped create and lead the March On for Voting Rights, Gen Z Unites for Voting Rights. It was an event that was co-sponsored by 19 organizations, including March Out for Our Lives, Sunrise, Black Youth Vote, Future Coalition, SEIU, and Youth Climate Strike. And they included Yolanda King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter, who was 12 years old, by the way. She's incredible, as a speaker. I believe securing voting rights is incredibly important, but really as a means rather than an end. Voting rights are essential for building a democracy that is just and works for all of us. We deserve a government that cares, a government that will tackle the climate crisis and ensure healthcare for all and distribute real reparations. These progressive goals will really be nothing but a dream if we don't protect voting rights. Voting rights are the key to building the world we want to see. In the Worker Circle College Network, we also work on issues related to climate justice, economic justice, and racial justice. We understand that these issues are all deeply interconnected. So we've started a Young Jews for the Green New Deal campaign, which demands an end to the extraction economy, which treats people and the land as disposable and disproportionately hurts Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color. We will see real change in our country, but only when all Americans can vote freely and fairly. We can't let them take the right to vote away from us. Democracy is literally at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. And it's like, yeah, you are not going to let anybody take anything away. Love it, love it, love it. All right, ready to bring up my next speaker. I'm bringing up Natalie. Let me get all this going. Natalie, there you are. And Noah, I'm going to remove your pin. Natalie, take it away. Tell us about what you're doing.
Hi, my name is Natalie Fashon. I am from Lacombe, Louisiana. I am a current senior at Southern University at New Orleans, where I study Africana Studies. And I am part of the Ride Revived. We are a student-led organization that is intergenerational, multiracial, and one of our main goals is voter protection, along with education, healthcare, and other issues. But as I said, voter protection is one of our main concerns. When we were deciding to build this coalition of students, and we were deciding what our main topics were, voter protection was at the forefront of the media. And we decided that at the time, we need to have voices that really represent what's going on. One of our main statements was that there were 43 states in the process of passing these voter protection bills. And at the time, my question was to our coalition, what are these 43 bills that are being passed? So at the time, we did all this research to really come up and find out what's going on. And one of those main states is Georgia, that we're seeing all these restrictions being passed. And so we looked at the states and really decided what can we do as a coalition to really back that and to combat what was going on. So as I said, we are student-led, and so all of our decisions are student-based, but we are advised by other professors, judges, lawyers, and so we're really making informed decisions. What a big part, like I said, about the Ride Revived is education. So we have to educate ourselves about what's going on, right? Even about voter protection. We have to know what the issues are. What are we fighting against? Everyone wants to get excited about something and they're not really sure what the real protocols and guidelines are involved. And so we're really big on informing ourselves so we can inform other populations, so we can make informed decisions about voting across the board. And so what I want to talk about today is really educating ourselves so that we can then mediate. So educate, then to mediate is what we're doing today, discussing what those issues are, what's most important, how do we get this done, so we can move forward and co-create a world that we really want to see and where we can really be the progressives that we really want to be.
Thank you very, very much, Natalie. Now, I was going to say, coming up next is going to be the Georgia Miracle. I got an opportunity to work on the Georgia Miracle because we did turn out in Georgia for the primary, the general, and then the runoff. It seemed like the Georgia election was never going to be over. So, Harvey, introduce our other stars from Georgia.
Okay, we have Robert Wilson, Ray Mcclendon, Gloria Tanubu, and Rebecca Landau. I want to say that the Georgia Miracle was that the Georgia went for Biden completely unexpectedly in November, and then in January 5th, the day before the storming of the Capitol, two U.S. senators went from Georgia, which has such a horrible history of racism, Georgia sent a Jewish and a Black senator to the United States Senate. Nobody saw that coming. And I will say that Andrea was at the heart of that, along with Ray Mcclendon. And if you think calls like these have no impact, our grassroots emergency election protection Zoom calls are what linked initially Andrea up with Ray Mcclendon from the Atlanta NAACP. And we feel that union was really at the heart of something that totally changed the country, because without those two Senate seats, we would be in a very, very different situation in this country. So I want to urge everyone, use the chat, please. We have 218 people on this call. Put your connections, express your points of view, ask questions. The chat will be available to everyone after the call, and make good use of it. That's what we're here for, is to network. Robert Wilson and then Ray Mcclendon, can you each take your 3 minutes of fame here? Robert, you are a former Assistant Secretary of State of the state of North Carolina, and your sage wisdom is always welcome. And then we'll go to Ray Mcclendon.
Well, thank you so much, Harvey. I really appreciated you and Joel having me. And I'm very humbled to be a part of this, and to listen to the different speakers have been very enlightening and very inspirational. And what I would simply say to you is that as mistrust, hatred, and a deteriorating justice system continues to grow, we must now see that facts and truth are being assaulted also. Day by day, we are witnessing the desecration of our democracy. We are creating a self-destructive, defiant attitude, which is going to lead us to a self-made crisis. Yet, we continue to play this high-risk, low-reward game of chicken and partisan politics. But down through the centuries, Father Time has shown us that there are essential foundations that must be protected for everyone. Whether you live in a society, a civilization, a culture, humanity, a nation, or a population, whoever controls access to these foundations will control that body of people. Thus, we have the power and the privilege that goes with it, and that for folks will govern. These three foundations, I believe, are the right to an education, the right to vote, and the right to capital, money. Without these three foundations, our democracy will crumble, thus setting the stage for a showdown with good versus evil. This is a moment in time, I believe, when a generation of people are called upon to preserve their own destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, we are those people. A failure to act is not an option. So let us all, each and every one of us, battle together to safeguard and protect our rights to these three essentials and make them ours forever. We must fight to protect them. Do not let this be a shoulda, coulda, or woulda moment. The spirit to fight this battle is in us. We have not been given the spirit of fear. Our ancestors brought us to this moment, and we must take our children to the next moment and beyond. Thank you, Harvey.
Got to unmute myself. Thank you so much. You are really a great treasure to have on, and your wisdom is fantastic. We now want to turn to Ray Mcclendon, the Atlanta political director of the Atlanta NAACP, one of the great engines behind the Georgia Miracle. Ray, you're looking very dapper today. Tell us what you
today, Harvey.
Do your 3 minutes of fame here, if you will.
Thank you. And first of all, let me say thanks to Harvey, to Joel, all those who created this event, and for the emergency election protection movement that made our coming together with progressives all around the country to fight for freedom and getting out to vote in Georgia a reality. We could not have done it without this platform and without coming together and having a way to channel all of the sympathy, interest, and energy from across the country. So thank you for that. And especially to Andrea Miller, who brought to us another level of digital strategy, which we had been trying to do and hoping and praying for over the years, and was realized in the Center for Common Ground and all of the support subsidiaries that Andrea and her genius and her team have created. They made a tremendous difference in our ability to engage with the public in the general election, as well as in the January runoff. What are we doing now? We're doing the same thing now that we had done prior to the current time frame, as we were doing last year. We formed coalitions across the state of Georgia with a variety of different civic engagement organizations, organizations such as the Divine Nine fraternities and sororities, different groups from around the state, other NAACP branches, as well as the Prince Hall Masons of Georgia and the Order of Eastern Stars and other civic engagement operations. What that did was for us to create a collaborative effort that allowed us to be much more efficient and effective. What are we doing now? We're taking that same approach that led to what's been called the Georgia Miracle, and we are transforming that into a more institutionalized approach to carry forward into the rest of 2021's municipal elections and beyond. So we're fighting against the voter suppression that was a direct result of our success from last year. We're doing that both in the State House and also working in tandem with leaders of county governments across the state to fight the oppressive SB 202 provisions, many of which you all have heard about, that were a direct result of our success. So we intend to press forward with this relational organizing strategy. We intend to not only use it once more here in Georgia, but we look forward to helping to export what we learned in Georgia in order to put to work in other battleground states. We believe that a grassroots effort from what we're doing here, it will be an extraordinary way of being successful using some of the techniques that we have learned that we can innovate with going forward in other states.
You're muted, Harvey.
Somehow I keep muting myself. It's a joy to have Andrea Miller on for us geezers who can't operate our cell phones. It's really great to be saved by the technicians. Ray, it's just a joy to work with you. You're not only a great guy, you're incredibly effective. Robert Wilson as well, and now Gloria Tinubu. If you will join us, please, Gloria Tinubu. You're also part of the Georgia Miracle. Please tell us, if you can, Gloria, if you will, about the Georgia Miracle Project and all the other great things you're doing now. Gloria Tinubu, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I certainly can. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you to you, Harvey, and particularly to Joel and the others for organizing this most needed event. We have to unify around the issues that we care about. And I use this opportunity to sort of do a little bit of research. I'm going to speak about that just a minute, about progressives in the past and what they did and what they believed. And one of the things that stuck out for me as I looked at some of that stuff was that they countered the narrative that we're hearing today. Someone talked about the cycles. We've seen this stuff before. Well, it's always been said that, the markets were free enterprise was just the greatest and the best, and it was designed perfectly. And now we should leave it alone and allow things to happen. But we know that government has used its powers to impact it for the benefit of the few, right? So there's always been this socialism for the few. And progressives back in the day said, if there's going to be socialism, let it be for the many. So that's one of the things that we have to keep hitting, that government always has been and is involved in the markets through our policies and through our elected officials. And they always dominate and control what happens. We have socialism, but it's socialism for the few that some folks want and not for the many. So I just wanted to say that. Now, talking about the Georgia Project, we have been working over the past several months to put in place a document that will enable other people to know how the miracle materialized here in Georgia. And it's a miracle that took decades to come into fruition. I entered it through my involvement with a group called the Southern Collaborative for the UN Decade, and we were looking at making sure that this country celebrated the UN Decade for people of African descent. And we were introduced to a lot of the work that Ray was doing, and we were very much involved with folks from Southwest Georgia Project, like Shirley Sherrod, who was doing an amazing amount of work that covered 14 to 15 counties in Southwest Georgia. So we ended up raising money for that effort. And one of the things that we found from doing this work, we've done a series of interviews with all of the major players that participated in the Georgia Miracle. And the two things that stood out for us, and particularly for me, was the fact that these organizations that had been around for decades, that had established relationships and constituencies decided that they would come together, that they would unify around this one cause of getting folks elected to office, particularly the two senators and the president elected to office. The second thing that we learned was that it was important for local people to have control of the resources needed to reach voters. That the most effective way, as Ray mentioned, was this relational organizing, but it also required financial resources so people could be paid and so that they could be able to undertake the various activities that needed to be done. And what we saw, whether it was in the urban area like Fulton County or down in Southwest rural Georgia, was that people responded to the call. They were committed to making a change and were able to certainly produce results that had impact not only for the state of Georgia, but for the country.
And you're in the process. You're in the process of recording people's testimonies about this, the Georgia Miracle Project. You're working with Steve Rosenfeld and Ray, and we really look forward to that. Can you give us your contacts, put them in the chat, and tell people how to get a hold of you?
All right. They can reach me at gtinubu, GTINUBU, @gmail.com.
Thank you so much. Is there a last word you want to put in before we move on? Okay, you've been great. Thank you so much, Gloria. Fabulous. And we look forward to that Georgia project. We're going to talk a couple minutes with Steve Rosenfeld, who's a part of that. Carol Buffum has said in the chat that it was not a Georgia miracle. It was a result of a lot of hard work. And Gloria, you were right in the center of that, you and Ray and Andrea, and we really, really appreciate it and welcome your work. Thank you so much. Rebecca Landau, are you with us, Rebecca Landau? There you are.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Here I am.
Okay. You also did work in Georgia, and
yeah, I'm continuing to do work right now in Georgia. Thank you for inviting me to speak quickly in this august space. I really immediately want to underline what Dr. Tinubu said about the importance of any organizing, especially around these voter issues that we're dealing with in Georgia, to come from within community. So we can bring the organizing and the tools to community. My specific project for Georgia that I am involved with is a Citizens Action Project. It's called the Rural Georgia Postcarding Project. It's 3 citizens activists, one who is in Georgia, and it was a download from the Georgia Secretary of State list of voters about to be purged for either change of address or lack of activity. And a lot of these folks are without phones. It's 24,000 voters. In 4.5 weeks, we've now got that list down to less than 4,000. We're postcarding this to make sure that people who don't have phones in rural Georgia are being communicated with to the best of our abilities. Again, these are colorful, these are handwritten. There's depending on where the postcardings come from, it's just a nonpartisan, you're about to be purged. This is how you can get in touch. And then we're working on getting follow-up with feet on the ground to see what happens with that. Again, thank you everyone for all of their work. I'm a firm believer in accessibility and information and education. So this ability to bring in the tools to community is what's going to happen to bring the intersectionality of the movement that we need to happen. I look at the Georgia Postcarding Project. This was just a citizens project. One, granted, it's a longtime organizers, but they just went on the Georgia Secretary of State. They downloaded the list. People from across the country are working on this project. I'm talking about people who are on very many different social platforms, whether you've got video gamers and on Twitch and Stream, as well as people who are on Clubhouse, across all social media platforms. And then one of the things I really want to put in as well, because this has really come up as part of the Georgia project, as well as other projects I'm involved with. When we talk about who are the leaders that we should be looking to, as well as so many others, I really would like to give a shout out for the disability leaders, because they are so on top of what's happening for accessibility and have so much experience with inaccessibility. They have a lot to add to our movement. And again, thank you everyone for your work. Georgia Postcard Project, I'm going to put it in the chat. We're less than 4,000 cards. Help us write a few cards.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And of course, you're in touch with Andrea Miller and Ray Mcclendon and the Atlanta NAACP and Gloria. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. We now have a first on one of our calls, Steve Rosenfeld. Steve, can you unmute and take off your mask? We've had many people in cars. Steve, are you unmuted now? Can we hear you? Okay, so Steve is our first panelist on a train. You're not driving the train, are you? You're just a passenger, right? So
no, not yet.
Okay, so Steve is going to segue. Steve has been a part of the Georgia Miracle Project and has been a part of the, shall we say, Michigas in Arizona. Steve, can you give us start with Georgia and then give us a report on, and then we'll segue into Ray Lutz and John Brakey in Arizona.
Sure. Well, first, I want to thank everybody who's organized this call and done all this work. It's remarkable, and we'll just leave it there.
Okay, your sound is a little problematic, so. Yeah, just keep talking
and just go audio.
Yeah, just go audio on your cell phone there. The video is probably causing problems, so kill the video and just go audio if you can.
Okay. We've done two things this summer. I'm a journalist. I cover voting rights, election administration, and on the Georgia Miracle Project, we've interviewed all these folks. I'm not writing my words. We have collected their words. We have a short book that's going to come out. It's going to talk about the organizing, the mission, the challenges, the details, what the solutions, the data, and that's coming really soon. We're getting really close to the finish line. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is this
yeah, you're good. You're good.
So that's coming together, and it is remarkable that so many groups changed so many things in terms of the way they had been doing stuff to really figure out what was needed now under the context of a pandemic with all these unprecedented necessities and solutions and responses. So the other thing I've been doing is I've been in Arizona, and I've been part of that. You'll hear more about that from John Brakey and Ray Lutz shortly. But one of the things I've been doing there is I've been trying to audit the auditors, the cyber ninjas, and take a look at really not just where their disinformation and that whole thing is coming from, but what else is out there to prove that the results are accurate and to convince people that we can understand the results. And what I have found is that there is an incredible amount of public information that was not used by the Secretary of State or the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, that the people who were more reasonable, or the local election officials or journalists. And basically, we can show that tens of thousands of people voted for Republicans, but they didn't vote for Trump. And this information was available by mid-November. So I'm going to just basically say, people like Andrea Miller and I, we have talked, we're going to try to use this. We're going to try to go forward, pave this forward, and show not just that you can verify who won, but you can explain it. You can basically, we can pinpoint that wealthy Republicans in these different suburbs voted for Biden. And we do it by looking at their ballots and the way that the votes are counted. So I'll leave it there to everybody, because this is a shaky internet connection. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to put my website in the chat.
Hi, Steve, that was great. Very, very much appreciated. Do we have John Brakey? Steve has done stellar work. His work is at voting booth, and he is the man who's going to put the Georgia Miracle Project into book form. And of course, we're also producing a video. Here we have John Brakey. John, you with us? Can you hear?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Okay, good.
Give us your 3 minutes here.
Okay.
We're really honored to have you.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be here. Yes, my name is John Roberts Brakey. I am an Arizona resident, a citizen activist working to strengthen our democracy through elections and transparency for the last 18 years. In late 2004, we started Audit. Audit is an acronym that stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. We are a public interest, nonprofit, 501c3 organization dedicated to making election transparency trackable and subject to public oversight. We are a nonpartisan group of citizens who believe that elections belong to the people, not to political parties or corporations. What we do is not about the right or left, it is about right and wrong. And when you do it as long as I have, you find out there's greed and corruption involved, a lot of it. One of the key concepts that one of our key concepts is that the actual act of voting is the secret process. However, counting is a public process. And somehow over time, we've lost our way. Our method is to educate and advocacy. Why? Because many people doubt the integrity of election processes, which means they do not vote or speak up and question reported results. If we can show that election results are accurate, we can help restore faith in our democracy. Ballot images are impunity busters. Audit USA is pioneering a method of public oversight which will prevent election fraud, detect it when it occurs, and assures accurate vote counts. Our method is to first educate election officials and public about what is required in the existing law, and second, to ensure that the law is followed. We at Audit USA know voters are not seeing the best evidence of accurate results. There is a smart mix of paper ballots and digital records. We have been pressuring election officials, including by filing lawsuits to preserve the ballots for 22 months and the images, by following federal elections as required by law. Unfortunately, half of the 3,000 counties in the U.S. do not currently follow the law. With education, election officials often decide to comply with the law. Then both innocent mistakes and deliberate attempts to undermine the system can be found and corrected. Folks, it is time to fully implement an existing system that creates digital images of each ballot cast. The solution can restore voters' confidence that their vote is really being counted as intended. A complete, transparent system with a clean and open chain of custody, trackable with checks and balances, a method of public verification audits, utilizing ballot images and risk-limiting audits. For some good news, the Department of Justice on July 28th of this year issued a directive on post-election audits, which the digital record ballot images must be preserved. For more information, go to our site, Audit Elections USA. Thank you for everything all you good folks out there do, and thank you for having me here, Harvey.
Well, great. It's really great to have you on. John, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of the great godfathers of the election protection movement. Tons of stuff wouldn't have happened. We call him the Godfather because his astonishing resemblance to Marlon Brando. But John, it's really been great to have you. Steve Rosenfeld also before you, and now Ray Lutz. Ray, are you with us? Ray is one of the technical gurus. And I got to say, this nonsense, this craziness in Arizona, had it not been for Steve and John and Ray coming out there and actually looking at what these cyber ninjas and all the other operatives have been doing, that they would have gotten away with murder. As it is, we are going to know when the crazy reports come what the real truth is. Ray Lutz, give us your 3 minutes of wisdom, please.
Well, thank you very much. And it's very much an honor to be with all these other great speakers here today. So I want to thank you for holding this. Now, yes, in Arizona, in fact, this whole election, we really lucked out because this was one of the first elections where most of the fully electronic machines had been, deprecated, taken out of service, and instead we had a paper record that then they could not really cheat as much as I believe they have for years. So Citizens Oversight is my organization. It started back in about 2005, fighting against Blackwater Worldwide to set up a training camp here in San Diego, and we won, forced them to abandon their plans. And then we fought the San Onofre nuclear plant, and we forced them to not restart that. And so since the Blackwater thing, they did a hand recount, and I was there with my camera, and I thought, it'd be great to take a picture of every single ballot that they're counting and go through them again. And so that's when I wrote that up, and partnered with John, who was working with the ballot images as well. And so now what we have is a tool called Audit Engine that allows us to audit these elections, and we're working now to deploy that. My goal is to have every single election audited just as a matter of due course, and every contest, and independently, not by the same people that conducted the election, which is what they're doing today. And most of these places don't do nearly enough sampling, if they do audits at all. And so we're trying to get that to be fixed. And the main thing is what John was mentioning, is getting the ballot images, getting the visibility, the transparency that we need to be able to check this stuff. Now in Arizona, what we've been seeing here is a ratcheting up of this sort of cyber warfare that's going on now in the election area, where you have these, right-winger groups, the Trumpers and so forth, who have now actually gotten a look at the inside of these machines. And I think they're doing it in order to see if they can cheat somehow. So we're going to have to be on our guard and really try to get our same technology base up for, I think the general public, and looking for the facts. As John said, it's not right or left. It's about facts, and we want to make sure that we can make these election officials show us exactly what the results were. And once we get the actual, the tabulation locked
Wrap
down.
up, please.
Yes.
What's it?
Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead, Ray.
Locked down, then we're going to have all these other scams which have just started. The Postal Service, the purging,
Great.
all of.
No. Ray, go ahead.
We're way behind, so everybody's got to stick to 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Ray. Just put your contacts in the chat. Ray Lutz, you're a great hero at San Onofre and in Arizona. Without you, we wouldn't know what's going on. So thank you so much. And it's an honor to have you, Ray. So stick with us. Okay, we now have a lineup. We have Falabi Olagbaju from Greenpeace, Mark Carlin from BuzzFlash, Emily Levy from Scrutineers, Lou from SmartVote, Steve Spitz, and Julie Weiner. So Falabi Olagbaju from Greenpeace, are you with us?
Yes, Sluggo.
Okay,
thank you.
please.
Thank you
3
for
minutes of fame. Good to see you. Okay, the timer's on, and you're going to be on with us also in the environmental panel.
I actually have to. This is running behind. I have another commitment so I might not be able to join the climate.
Okay, I'll speak for Greenpeace when we get to.
Of course.
So let's do our 3 minutes on election protection.
So thank you, Sluggo. Thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm so delighted to be here. As someone who grew up in Nigeria, a country that was for many years, when I was my formative years under military dictatorship, I have a deep and personal appreciation for democracy. As a naturalized citizen of this country, I've never missed an election. I saw that as a sacred right for me as a naturalized citizen. So it was also in this same mode that I was very delighted to join tens of thousands of people on Sunday who are marching on for voting rights 58 years after MLK did his march on Washington. The reason why we're all marching is very important. It's very clear. Voting rights. voting rights is preservative of all rights. It's the foundation for all other rights that we enjoy. Working as a staff of Greenpeace, an environmental organization, we know that our democracy should be the best tool for achieving climate solutions. Unfortunately, this democracy has been hijacked by corporate interests. And we understand very well why we are in this democracy space. All the gains that we've achieved over the last 3 or 5 decades in the environmental world, whether it's clean air, whether it's clean water, they've all been realized through the political process, either through the act of Congress or through the executive order. So we have made a very strong connection between racial justice and voting rights and climate change. What we have done in this space is to really focus on corporations. We wrote a report in May, and I'm going to put the report here, titled Dollars versus Democracy, which basically focus on how corporations contribute to the attack on our freedom to vote and also our right to protest. The report was done to kind of expose the disconnect between what corporations are saying that they support voting rights, say that they support Black Lives Matter, but where they are spending their money is totally different. So,
Falabi, can you give us the link to that report?
I just put it there. I put the link there. The link is there. Do you see it? I'll put it again.
Yes, I see it. It's very good. Falabi, we have to move on. Can you give us 2 5?
Basically, we are targeting the chambers. As you know, the chamber is the biggest lobby group in the country. They're spending gazillions of money influencing our politics. And back in May, they wrote a letter to all the senators threatening them retribution if they vote in support of For the People Act, S1.
Wow,
and,
okay.
On this, the chamber is out of touch because many corporations actually support voting rights. They are also out of touch with the American people because For the People Act has a wide bipartisan support across the country.
Okay, Falabi, thank you for that. We're thrilled to see Greenpeace is going after the chamber. We're going to have to move on. We've got your report. Do you want to make a last quick comment? Okay, we're good. Falabi, we'll miss you on the environmental panel, but we thank you so much. It's great to work with you, and we're thrilled that Greenpeace is in the loop on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sluggo.
Okay, we'll see you next week at the Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition meeting. Okay, can we go to Mark Carlin? Mark Carlin, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, 3 minutes of fame, please. We're just around 200 folks. Go ahead, please, jump in.
Mark, BuzzFlash was founded in May of 2000 as an alternative to the corporate media, and it continues to be that way. I think you see the distinction this week when the mainstream media, even MSNBC, is concentrating on Afghanistan and the hurricane. It remains the prerogative of and the necessity of the progressive media to continue to report on issues that are vital to our democracy, and all the distinguished people today have been speaking of. I'll just give one example and then move on because of the time shortage. The issue of the suppression of vote is not just a new issue and extended suppression. We've had suppression of the vote accepted in elections for many years, particularly BuzzFlash, when it first started, covered the suppression of the vote in Florida in the 2000 election. In 2018, by 65%, the citizens of Florida passed a proposition that would allow felons to vote because felons couldn't vote in Florida. The Republican legislature and Ron DeSantis quickly made that basically proposition that didn't have any teeth in it, meaning that the former felons couldn't vote and only a few thousand could. I won't get into the technical details of what they did to hobble it, but they did. So when we're talking about voter suppression, we need a progressive media that keeps bringing up, excuse me, not only the current voter suppression, but voter suppression that's been like a silent monoxide poisoning for many years. And this is true in many, many states. So it's not just fighting back at the new voter suppression, it's continuing to fight to end the old voter suppression. And we need progressive media to counteract the corporate media. 80% of the media today is owned by corporations. And what they're interested in is in viewership in Afghanistan and the hurricane, give that to them. And so they forget the basic issues of democracy that we all are concerned with and that we emphasize on buzz flash. Thank you, Harvey.
You're great. Mark Carlin has been a real stalwart using BuzzFlash to cover election protection issues when very few others would. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate your great work. And you've put the BuzzFlash link, please, in the chat. We're going to go to Emily Levy from Scrutineers. Emily, are you with us?
I am.
Emily,
thank you so much. And thanks for
great to have you.
For the event and for the opportunity to speak. Like a lot of folks who are here today, I've been an activist for more than 50 years. And for the last 17 years or so, I focused on election transparency because we rely on elections to make progress on all the social and environmental justice issues that I care so deeply about, and I know you do too. And elections even impact response to street protests, as we've seen really tragically in the last couple of years. Today, especially in this section of the program, you're going to hear a lot about specific tactics used to protect elections, like ballot images and audits and things like that. And I know that that can get technical and be somewhat overwhelming, and it can even feel like you can't have an impact, but I'm here to tell you that you can. I founded Scrutineers.org in January 2020 as a place for primarily non-techie people who are new to caring about having transparent elections that we all can trust, a place where folks could learn about our vulnerable election technology and procedures and what we can actually do to make a difference. We're an online community. We've gotten 900 members so far and 8 member organizations. And it's basically designed to help you learn what you need to know to be an effective volunteer for groups like some of those represented here today. So that's part of how we support the movement as a whole. We train people to know the things they will need to know, no matter which of these organizations they want to volunteer for. Excuse me. So it's a place where you can attend or watch recorded video training sessions, ask questions, connect with other people, and prepare to take action. And I also started Scrutineers because I saw that there was really a need for much stronger alliances between folks working to make sure the freedom to vote is protected and those working to make sure that all those votes are counted and counted accurately. That collaboration is our focus in Scrutineers as we look toward the 2022 election cycle. And I believe it's absolutely crucial if we're going to move toward a future where communities reclaim elections as part of the commons. So 3 of the essential things that I think need to happen to get us there are, briefly, 1, working together in coalition and partnership. 2, investing in the new generation of leaders, especially those from marginalized communities. And 3, creating a fairness force to protect all the voters and all the votes. So if you're thinking, I care about this, but I don't know how I can help, please come to our website, scrutineers.org, to learn more and join. We're having an orientation for new members on Wednesdays, scheduled that intentionally to be right after this event. And you can find us on Twitter at ScrutineersUS. And if you want to discuss the collaboration that I talked about, you can send a message through our website or DM us on Twitter. So thank you all, and let's hear it for the freedom to vote.
Perfect, Emily. Thank you so much. You're a great trooper. It's great to have you with us. And let's go now to Lulu Friesdad. Lulu, you're at 3 Minutes of Fame. Lulu is another great organizer through the web and runs tremendous Zoom calls. Lulu, can you give us the detail and tell people how to get a hold of you?
Hi, Harvey. Thank you so much for having me here today. And thanks to everybody who's organized it. My name's Lulu Freistad. I'm the executive director of Smart Elections, and we also have a sister organization called Smart Legislation, which is specifically formed to work on improving legislation. And like many of the people in this section, I work and focus on election security, accuracy, and transparency. My background is that I'm an election security journalist, and many of you may not know me, so I'll just give you kind of a brief overview. I did investigations online that got over 4 million views. My work has been featured in The Hill, The Washington Post, Politico, Now This, MSN.com, Salon. I've been quoted in the New York Times. And prior to becoming an advocate, I did work extensively in network news, including all the major networks like ABC, CBS, and NBC. So I do come at this from a journalistic point of view, and one of my main focuses is on data. And I think I'm going to just give you a quick kind of example of how data can be impactful. I think one of the things that really struck out to me, and the things that people said today, Reverend Hagler talked about tactics and how tactics have to create unease. They have to create an action because we have a feeling that something is wrong. And how do we do that? Well, one of the ways that we do it at Smart Elections is with data and with public oversight projects. So this is a really quick little example. I got married a few years ago, and I've lived with my husband for years now. And when we first moved in together, I found, as many women do, that I was doing a large part of the housework. And my husband's very progressive, and he was supportive, but I didn't quite know how to address this issue. And I'll tell you what I did. I created an Excel sheet, and we both put our information in the Excel sheet about how much housework we were doing or what we were doing to support the house. And then there was a piece of data, metrics, that showed that I was doing about 2/3 and he was doing about 1/3. And that was tremendously powerful because even though his heart was in the right place, when he hadn't really changed, but when he saw the data, he changed. And now we have this chart and our work is really pretty much even. We do about half and half. And this is just an example to say to you, data can be powerful. So what kind of data do we want to bring into the election space? I want to encourage you to think about the election space in kind of like 3 different areas, and it may open up your horizons. Most of the time, we think about what I call the front end. That's voting rights. That's making sure that people get to the polls and that they get to vote. Incredibly important. I'll wrap up in a sec, Harvey. But what we don't think about are the middle end and the back end. And that's where we often collect our data with public oversights. The middle, what are the voting machines, the technology, and the back is how are the votes being counted. So I encourage you to work with us. I'll put our information into the chat. We're especially looking for people for our board of directors from all across different sectors. We are completely nonpartisan. And I really encourage you to find out more about our work and join us at smartelections.us. We have a
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Lulu. We really appreciate it. You put your information in the chat, right? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Next is Julie Weiner. Julie's from New York. She's been working on important issues, especially legislation on the types of voting machines that are going to be allowed in the state. Julie, are you with us? Julie Weiner?
I am.
Go for it.
Hi. Can you see me and hear me?
We can
I guess
hear you.
it's just going to be here. I had a nice.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. As long as we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Julie Weiner. I work with Citizens for Voting Integrity New York. Look at our website, citizensvotingny.org. We were active in gaining New York. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
The paper ballots that, the hand-marked paper ballots that once made our state exemplary for election integrity compared to the touch screens most states bought after the Help America Vote Act. Hand-marked paper ballots can't be hacked, and unlike computers, which can mismark ballots, hand-marked paper ballots necessarily represent voters' intent. So, with hand-marked paper ballots, New York should already have secure elections, right? Hand recounts could guarantee that our votes are counted accurately, but New York has never established post-election audit procedures adequate to catch or reverse errors in our computerized vote tallying. In our bipartisan election administration, A single partisan election commissioner can veto any escalation of our audit of 3% of voting machines. So no candidate has ever persuaded a court to overturn such a decision, even when errors were found in the 3% computer count. Just this year, we finally started requiring hand counts in very close elections. Had 100% hand recounts been in place in November 2020, our 22nd congressional district would perhaps now be represented by progressive environmentalist, former Congressman Anthony Brindisi. He was highly favored to win, according to 538. Instead, NYCD 22 will be represented by Claudia Tenney, who supports, for example, removing protection from streams under coal mining company control, increasing pollution. Brindisi was denied a full recount. I'm just underlining the importance for every urgent issue that people here are worried about of accurately counted and verified elections. Rita Hart in Iowa, another candidate supported by our ally, the Sierra Club, was projected to win 88. CD22 in Iowa, instead of winning hands down, officially lost by 6 votes. Both of these good candidates were denied recounts of ballots sitting unviewed in ballot boxes under scanners that may or may not have been counted accurately. We may never know. We need your help.
Give us your contacts, Julie, please.
Yes, our Facebook is, email us at cvivoter@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, please check it for our list of current urgent bills to pass on both auditing and safe voting machines. Can be found at facebook.com/NY voting integrity.
Okay, Julie, thank you so much. You've added a tremendous amount to our GREEP Zoom calls, and today, again, fantastic stuff. So keep in touch. Put your your contacts in the chat. You are a great organizer, and your work is absolutely fabulous and essential. Steve Spitz in Virginia. Steve, my fellow Michigander, a University of Michigan alum and election protection, a civil rights attorney. Got your 3 minutes of fame ready to go.
Thank you very much, Harvey. I wanted to highlight an issue that Mark Carlin raised in the context of Florida, and that is in Virginia. It's I think the only state left that still has in the Virginia Constitution complete lifetime disenfranchisement for everybody who has a felony conviction unless they are restored individually by the governor of the state. Now, there is a constitutional amendment that passed this year in the Virginia General Assembly that would make automatic the restoration of those voting rights upon release from prison, which is something that I personally been involved with for about 15 years. It has to pass next year in identical language and then be ratified by the voters in Virginia in the November 2022 election. So those of you who can help on that, please contact me. I will put my information on the chat. Secondly, although the last 2 governors have individually restored a lot of people to the right to vote, many of those people have no idea that they've been restored and have not heard, literally, that they can register to vote. And I would encourage everybody to work with Andrea Miller and the great work that she and others are doing at Center for Common Ground to restore these people's right to vote. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, Steve. Thank you. And do you have contacts you can put in the chat? If you whatever contacts you have, if you can put them in the chat, that would be great. We're still at 195 people. That actually concludes the presentation. Thank you, Steve, again. Thank you all for your incredible presentations. And it's really been spectacular. As I say, we will continue with our Monday grassroots.
Was there an Adam? Was there an Eve? Or did we evolve from what we conceived? Either way, we got what we needed when the sun shone down on the Garden of Eden.
Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia all over God's green world.
Well, we bit that apple and the garden was lost, and so we had to work.